words of our Divine Mother from the book The Mother by Sri Aurobindo with Mother's comments of 1951, comments on chapter 5, page 84. Sri Aurobindo says in the book The Mother, if you want to be a true doer of divine works, your first aim must be to be totally free from all desire and self-regarding ego. Now the question, sometimes we go to the market to buy our things. Is that good? For this our mother says, one cannot make general rules. This depends on the spirit in which you make your purchases. It is said that you should have no desires. If this is not a desire, it is all right. You understand? There is no moment, no action which in itself is good or bad. It depends absolutely on the spirit in which it is done. If, for instance, you are in a state of total indifference about what you have and what you do or what you do not, it is a condition a little difficult to realize. But after all, one cannot attain it, a state of detachment. If I have it, I have it. If I don't, I don't. There comes a moment when, if your state is quite sincere and you really need something, it must not be a fancy or a desire or a caprice, but a true need. Automatically, the thing comes to you. Since I've been here, it is a long time, isn't it? I have known people who have never asked me for anything. I don't even think naturally there always weakness in human nature, but I don't even think they have had a violent desire for anything at all. But when it is a need, automatically it came to them. Suddenly the idea would come to me, this must be given to so and so. And if it was not directly through me, in some way, quite unexpectedly, the thing came to them. On the other hand, if one is preoccupied with one's needs, I don't want even to speak of the desires, for that is quite another thing. But if one is preoccupied with one's needs, if one thinks of them, tells oneself truly I must have this, it is not often that it comes to you. So you are obliged to do something to satisfy yourself, and if you have the means, to go and buy the thing. Now there are people who always take their desires for their needs, that we do not speak of these, they form the great majority. They are convinced that without this or that one cannot live. It is impossible. One cannot live without that. I shall fall ill, or something very unpleasant will happen to me, or I shall not be able to do my work. It is impossible. If I don't have this, I can't do my work. So the very first step for these people is to try a small experiment if they are sincere. Well, I won't have this thing, and we are going to see what happens. This is a very interesting experiment, and I guarantee you that 999 times out of 1000, after a few days, one asks oneself, but why the devil did I think I had such a great need of this thing? I can do without it very well. There you are. And like this, little by little, one makes progress. It is a question of training, educating oneself. The sooner one begins, the easier it is. When one begins very young, it becomes very easy, for one gets accustomed to the inner reactions and so can act with wisdom and discernment. Whereas for those who are accustomed from their childhood to take all their desires for needs or necessities, they have flung themselves into them with passionate zeal. The road is much more difficult because first they must acquire discernment and distinguish a desire from what it is not, and sometimes it is very, very difficult. It is mixed up that it can hardly be perceived. But after all that, I believe one doesn't need much. Once I remember four of us had gone for a walk tour across the mountains of France. We had started from one town, had to reach another. It was about 8 or 10 days' journey across the mountain. Naturally, each one of us carried a bag slung across our back, for one needs a big things. But then, before starting, we had a little discussion to find out what things we are really needed and what was quite indispensable. And always we came to this, let us see. That thing we can manage it this way. And everything was reduced to so little. I knew a Danish painter who used to say, "Do you know when I travel, I needed only one thing, a toothbrush." But somebody replied, "No, but no, if you don't have a brush, you can still rub with your finger." Next question. Before understanding any action, one tries to know whether the impulse comes from the mother or not. But generally, one doesn't have enough discernment to know it, and yet one acts. Can one know from the result of the action whether it came from the mother or not? For this, our Divine Mother says, one does not have the discernment because one does not care to have it. Listen, I don't think there is a single instance in which one doesn't find within oneself something very clear, but you must sincerely want to know. We always come back to the same thing. You must sincerely want it. The first condition is not to begin thinking about the subject, building all sorts of ideas, opposing ideas, possibilities, and entering into formidable mental activity. First of all, you must put the problem as though you were putting it to someone else. Then keep silent. Remain like that, immobile. After a little while, you see that at least three different things may have happened, sometimes even more. Take the case of an intellectual one who acts in accordance with the indications of his head. He has put the problem and he waits. Well, if he is indeed attentive, he will notice that